When it comes right down to it, no one wakes up in the morning saying they want to be a micromanager. No one wants to be bad at managing. No one wants to have to bring HR in. No one wants to lose team members because they felt like, hey, this manager isn't cut out for it. And yet, HR ends up dealing with all the fallout of bad managers every single day. Because the truth is, the top two reasons we even become managers is because we were really good at our past job, or we've been in that job for a long time. Right? Neither of those mean that we wanted to, or we've been trained at it, or we'd even be good at it. And I think because of that challenge I shared earlier, where a lot of us feel like it's the only path we have to grow, we step into the role with kind of thinking we're going to wing it as we go, and it's at the expense of our teams. So the stakes, they're really high, right? 57% of team members say they've left a job because of a bad manager, and my guess is like 99% of us, well, we thought about it, right? Like maybe we didn't actually leave a job because of a bad manager, but it sure has caused us to think twice about staying. Or maybe it chipped away at the quality of our work because we had someone that didn't support us. 60% of managers don't even get training in the role at all, right? And this is just what we're reporting on. So I bet it's even worse than this when it comes right down to it. And to add to that, 52% of managers report feeling burned out. That's even most than individual contributors who are like at 48. So being a manager is really, really difficult right now. And because of this, because of all the change and uncertainty and trying to mobilize into AI and support our teams, it's become even harder. But when I talk about micromanaging, it can become like, I don't even know, can I set expectations, can I give feedback, I really want to be specific on this thing, and we get really worried about it. So I want to leave you with one thing. Micromanaging is not about what, it's about when. Micromanaging is kind of like trying to control every bit of a task once something's gotten started. And that's where I think a lot of us get wrong. We want to be hands-off, we want to give our team members space. So we're like, go for it, I trust you, you got this. And then we're like, I didn't really like that part. Or, well, like, we didn't use the deck, I said, or we did need to meet about this. And we start to like pick up little things along the way. So when we set expectations up front, we really prevent ourselves from having to micromanage because we've gotten crystal clear. I was running a workshop with a really high-end PR team a few weeks ago, and they asked me, well, we have really, really high standards. How do we set those for our teams and not feel like we're, overly controlling everything? And I said, you got to set that context up front. You got to explain to people, hey, before they get started, clients are working with us, they're paying $7,000 a month, so they're expecting really high standard. Here's what that looks like. Here's the presentation template we use. Here's the email signature. Here's the way that we run our meetings. And it's okay and actually expect to set that context. But we want to do it up front so that folks feel set up for success. Another piece about micromanaging I found is we don't always know when we're doing it, because a lot of times it happens when we're feeling really stressed, we're feeling a lot of pressure, we're feeling like, I'm getting asked, I'm pulling so many directions, right, the diamond in the lump of coal. We're in that situation, we're really, really feeling the heat. And so I have two tells that we're micromanaging, that just things to look out for. When we're in every single meeting, and when we're making every single decision, or like most of the meetings and most of the decisions. So on these different pieces, I'm going to share some of the common challenges or questions I get, or the pain point that comes from the business owner. First one is, well, I pay people really well, right? I am not trying to undercut people. I'm trying to pay people really well. I'm trying to give them opportunities. And yet I'm the only one focused on growing this business. Like, how do you think we're going to keep having jobs if no one else is trying to grow this business? It's a really frustrating disconnect that really gets us. Now, where we get stuck when it comes to priorities is having too many, or were they too vague? Now, let me give you a couple examples. I think sometimes we got big dreams, big goals, we have our plan, but we have 37 top priorities and 4 team members to get it done, and we're just like, just make it happen, just go. And I think a lot of us have probably had a boss like that before that said yes is the only answer, we just have to get it done, doesn't matter how you do it, just do it. And people start to agree to something that they know they can't do. So speaking of the accountability challenge, when we set too many priorities, when priority means like first thing, kind of one thing, and we have 85 things to do, you start to chip away at integrity because people are agreeing something that is not possible to get done. And then the really big problem is your team members decide the priorities for you. And they're just gonna wing it and figure it out like, well, okay, I said yes to a bunch of stuff, like I'll just get done what I can. And now they may choose things that you wouldn't have chose for that list of priorities. So that's the challenge when we have too many.
The breakdown across everything is something going wrong in communication, right? It's that we didn't have the right information cascading down, people couldn't weigh in on decisions, so then when they are made, they don't really agree with them, or they didn't know what they were. And so the solution to all of this is clarity. And so when we find, wait, something's off here, people didn't know, or they're disagreeing, or they missed a deadline, or we're running into one of these challenges that's on the other side of a miscommunication, as leaders, asking ourselves, how could we have been more clear? And then sort of walking back through the process, okay, what were the different communication touch points? What were the meetings? How did we come to this decision? Where were people weighing in? What was the approval process? Whatever it looks like. And I'm not saying you need to create a complex process, but looking at, well, how does information flow within your organization? And then thinking, you know, we might be clear as leaders, because a lot of times as leaders, you're talking about the strategy all the time. You're talking about the plan, the KPIs, all these things. But by the time that gets down to your team, it's like a game of telephone. They maybe heard it one time in one email, and you've been talking about it for months, right? So it's like, how did they not get this already? But especially when I was working in chief of staff capacities in both Microsoft and Google, I found that working with the VP level to formulate the plan, we'd be talking about this for months, and then it was like one email sent, and then they're surprised nobody cares and understands the plan. So I think the biggest thing there, Megan, is repetition and clarity, and not assuming people are going to get it just hearing it once, and not assuming they're going to care about it because they heard it once, right? So then we have to connect it back to here's the mission, the goals, the priorities, and here's how you, specifically your team, your role fits with that. So that kind of goes back to that first point I was thinking.
It's really on us to be proactively checking in with our team members, not just waiting for them to say, like, I think my job sucks, right? Or like, I don't really get where I fit in, but making sure they really see that connection to the bigger picture. Now, the other thing that conversation allowed me to do was give this person a little bit of hard feedback that was really necessary. So because she was approaching her job from this task babysitter land, she wasn't creating any documentation, she wasn't really doing that proactive communication, she was kind of sitting back and waiting. And so now I could say, hey, well, what does it mean to be in this strategic proactive role? And we said, well, I guess there's some documentation needed. I said, yes, okay, well, what kinds would that look like? And then she came up with some ideas. And out of those conversations, I could really work with her and coach her into creating the right documentation, setting up the follow-up meetings, not looking at it as administrative, but, well, follow-up meetings and documentation, that's to keep people informed so that we can manage these risks in a better way, right? So we created that shift in our mind, away from this tactical, who cares, to, wow, I have this really, really important role here, and without me, all this stuff doesn't get done. So these are the opportunities that you have as leaders to really get ahead of those conversations. And we don't want to wait, again, till our team members like, I'm basically already out of here, because we already saw how important and critical retention is. We've talked about this, every team is focused on that. But this is the way that you have those conversations proactively, right? Is in your mind, you are holding the vision for each team member and how they connect with that. And so coming out of this session today, or this whole summit today, we want each of you to be able to feel really equipped to excitedly talk to your team members, each and every one about them, about where they fit in the plan.